the next 6 to 8 months, I'm going to be looking for some cheeky data points. James is looking at this, or James is looking at that. At what point does this start to look like a position I might sell some? And I'm not someone who's going to sit here and never sell your Bitcoin. Obviously, ideally never sell your Bitcoin. But what if you want something in your life that you make your life materially better? Well, sell some Bitcoin.
That is worth more than money. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So what are some of the metrics that you're following that you would be willing to share today that are really spicy over kind of 6 to 8 months? I remember so well one of your presentations, the first time I saw you speak publicly, talking about reading the tea leaves. You could just see, as you've described, these waves of emotion. I saw a stat just this week showing how retail's just not even Googling the name Bitcoin at the moment. So we're not even close, right, to anything kind of euphoric. Yeah, so I'd love to know, what are some of the things that we keep an eye on over the next 6 to 8 months?
Yeah, so we're in a slightly different world. And I think it's really important, in my view, to just recognize that the four most dangerous words in finance is this time is different. This time is kind of a little bit different, right? So there's a few different elements. One, I think it's undeniable that Bitcoin has now crossed the Rubicon, where it is now a part of the world of finance. It is now accepted. And I see this, I'm actually amazed. This is the thing that amazes me the most. We're now seeing critics of Bitcoin from years ago saying there's Bitcoin and then there's crypto. They're actually making the separation, the distinction. This is new. This is not a recent thing. This is a new thing where people are actually, broadly speaking, recognizing that there is Bitcoin and crypto, two different things. And actually, on the post that I was preparing just before I jumped on this call, one of the charts that I show is the Bitcoin market cap change. So we had a pretty volatile day as Trump's getting inaugurated and swings up 10%, down 10%. In that process, Bitcoin added $160 billion and then wiped it out again, right, in market cap. $160 billion is a top 100 company in the world. And I did this in one day, right? It's 40% of Ethereum's market cap, which is the number 2 coin. When you realize that Bitcoin in a single random, no information wick can move 40% of your second biggest asset, the second biggest asset doesn't matter. Bitcoin is so much bigger than everything else. The bid that is under this market is also very different. We have gone from FTX bottom, which was 15,600.
Yeah, just under
to
16, wasn't it?
109,000. And we have had a 26% drawdown is typical, right? Normally we're having 30, 40, 50, 60, sometimes 70% drawdowns in this process. We've barely had a 25%, 26%. We had one wick that went to 32% and it lasted 3 hours in August. So there just hasn't been any downside. It's just been this up, sideways, up, sideways, up, sideways, which is a very, very stable market structure. The ETFs have taken in 50 billion. I think IBIT alone has taken in 50 billion in terms of AUM. The ETFs as a construct are now bigger than the gold ETFs. So you just look at all these data points, you're like, this thing, it has
demand is just massive, isn't it? Yeah.
Demand is off the chart. So the way that I think about this, right? And look, there's a lot of, I won't go into all the details, but I find it very hard to believe that we're going to go back down below about 60, 70K. I find this hard to believe. The reason why I call out that area, let's just say 60,000 for even numbers, that's approximately where Bitcoin is a $1 trillion asset. I think it's actually 1.2. So somewhere between 55 and 60 is $1 to $1.2 trillion market cap. Now, in 2021, we tried to do this twice. First in Q1 in like April, we tried to get above 1.2 and we got rejected with a 50% sell-off. We then tried again and we did it. We got up there, we got to 70,000 and then we had a 80% bear market, right? We tried twice. We then waited all the way through 2023. The ETFs go live. We rally up in March. We spent 7 months trading sideways, and every time we got down to 1.2 trillion, right back up again. Sold off, right back up again. The market simply would not let it be worth less than $1 trillion. Bitcoin is now a $1 trillion asset, and we teleported immediately to 2, right? And we went above silver. Silver didn't put up any fight whatsoever. We flipped silver and just stayed there. It just didn't go down. So I've been writing about this. The market simply won't go down. Now, that doesn't mean it won't go down. It will eventually go down, right? So don't mince my words. It will eventually go down. However, we have to also recognize that If we're at 100K and we typically get an 80% correction, we're not going back to 20K. That's just not happening. So suddenly you're like, okay, either Bitcoin has to go higher or we're not having 80% drawdowns anymore. Maybe 30, 40, 50% is normal now, right? So you start thinking about in these concepts, and I have this saying, the bull market will author the bear that follows. If you wake up tomorrow and Bitcoin's gone from 100,000 to $1 million, yeah, now you got your 80% drawdown, right? Incoming. If on the other hand, we grind up and let's say we go to 120 or 130, and then we chop around sideways for 6, 7, 8, 9 months, and then we go again. We're building support that whole way up. People are getting used to, oh, $100,000. I don't like that Bitcoin's $100,000 because I can't buy as much anymore. But I also kind of understand it. I'm not willing to wait. I'm not sitting on my hands and going, nah, I'm not buying Bitcoin until it goes back to 20K. That's gone. Those days are gone. So you eventually realize that like we're in a new altitude now. You got to get used to it, right? Start doing your breathing exercises. Get used to the fact that we're no longer $1 trillion asset. We're a $2 trillion asset. And we'll go up to 3, 4, 5. We'll pull back to 2. All these things will happen. But the probability that we're going to go down to $20,000 again, it's just so infinitesimally small. I just don't think it happens. So therefore, you just have to acclimatize yourself to where we are in this new kind of regime.
Even if it did, the time it would spend down there would be so short that it'd be like catching a knife edge.
It'll be an
Talk
event.
about a trading event. No one's sitting on their phone all day watching the price. Like that's how plugged in you'd have to be. And by the time you like move some dollars onto an exchange, just forget it. The moment has been and gone for sure.
Absolutely.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Wow. And so I don't like price and time predictions, but is there anything that you're putting out there in the universe you think's in the realm of possibility over the next 12 months?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no. So the way that I look at it, again, let's bring it back to basics. What puts the top in? A top in. And when we say top, a lot of people get caught on like they think there's going to be these big cycles, and there might be, right? We might get these cycles, but the correct way to think about this is which top matters for you as an individual. Same reason that your inflation rate is what matters. What top do you care about? And the answer is going to be very different if you're a retiree. If you're a retiree who's been buying Bitcoin for 6 years, 7 years, the next top, based on where I look at things, if we get to 120, 150K, I think that's going to take some time to get through. I don't think we just teleport through and suddenly we're at 500,000. I think 120 is where I look at a lot of models. And basically, I'm looking at when do people start to sell? And what incentivizes people to sell? There's two things. They're either in a really big loss and they want to just capitulate and get out, or in a bull market, they're looking at a big green number and going, man, that's life-changing. I could pay off my mortgage with that. When a lot of people go, hey, I can pay off my mortgage with that, suddenly you get a lot of sellers. Sellers are what creates tops. Local, global, all sorts of things. So understanding what top matters for you is important. For me, even if it got to 150,000 US, that's not my price. My price is higher than that because I'm early 30s. I can wait. I'm not fussed. I have no issue with kind of income. I'm not fussed about just letting Bitcoin do its thing. If we go to 500,000, it's like, yeah, of course I'll take some chips off the table. But 150, isn't it? So anyway, I look at a lot of models and say, well, I can see everyone's cost basis. If I can see everyone's cost basis, at what level did everyone sell last time and the time before and the time before that? Oh, look, they all seem to sell at the same level, right? When their green number in their portfolio is very big. So therefore, what price would we have to go to based on the current cost basis for this group or that group or this group? If I look at all these different groups, people have been around for a long time, people who just bought the whole market on average. If I look at all these different groups, I can start to say, well, what price do we need to go to today in order for all of those people to hit that threshold where they're like, wow, I can pay off my mortgage. Therefore, I can kind of project and say, well, here's probably the zone of interest. So the bottom of that zone of interest, that's called like a topping cloud. It's like a cloud of areas where I don't know where the top's going to be. But this is where people are going to start making decisions to cash out, historically speaking. 120 is the bottom of that as we stand today. We're at 102 today. 150 is kind of getting into the top realm. You're above 9 out of all 10. So once we get to 150, that doesn't mean that that's going to be the top. It's going to be probably a top. We'll probably get some serious resistance. We probably won't just zip through it and that's the end of it. And if we do, we'll probably come back down into it, right? The market's got to find where it wants to go. And look, maybe it just keeps going. But based on historical precedent, I'd be very surprised if we go from 150 to 200 in the matter of a week. I would say that 150 is probably where we get to in and around the next 6 months, 8 months. And I think it will take several months, maybe a year, to prove that we actually have to go higher. Maybe we have to go lower before we go higher. But that's my just general ballpark, because that's where people have sold in the past. And my assumption is that if human beings are very, very similar and we have the same emotional drivers, a lot of people will do the same thing.
I also really like the idea of buying on the way down. I.e., it's like, okay, I think we've hit the top, and it could have been 2 weeks ago. But the point is like you're getting a liquidity moment that's not far off. The best, most sophisticated traders in the world, they will all admit that they cannot get it perfect. No one can. It's pure luck. You're like, oh, that was actually the top that I got.
Totally.
Okay, sweet. Because, let's say it's all the way back down at 15,800. I remember people like, it's going to $5,000. I mean,
Yes.
no one has a clue what's going on.